There was an old dairy down dairy, who loved to see little folks merry, so he made them a book, and with laughter they shook at the fun of that dairy down dairy. Edward Lear's Nonsense Rhymes and Pictures, Part 1. There was an old man with a nose, who said, "If you choose to suppose that my nose is too long, you are certainly wrong." That remarkable man with a nose. There was a young person of Smyrna, whose grandmother threatened to burn her, but she seized on the cat and said, "Granny, burn that, you incongruous old woman of Smyrna." There was an old man on a hill, who seldom if ever stood still. He ran up and down in his grandmother's gown, which adorned that old man on a hill. There was an old person of Chile, whose conduct was painful and silly. He sat on the stairs eating apples and pears, that imprudent old person of Chile. There was an old man with a gong, who bumped it all the day long, but they called out, "Oh law, you're a horrid old bore," so they smashed that old man with a gong. There was an old man of Kilkenny, who never had more than a penny. He spent all that money in onions and honey, that wayward old man of Kilkenny. There was an old man of Columbia, who was thirsty and called out for some beer, but they brought it quite hot in a small copper pot, which disgusted that man of Columbia. There was an old man in a tree, who was horribly bored by a bee. When they said, "Does it buzz?" he replied, "Yes, it does. It's a regular brute of a bee." There was an old Lady of Chertsey, who made a remarkable curtsy. She twirled round and round till she sank underground, which distressed all the people of Chertsey. There was a young lady whose chin resembled the point of a pin, so she made it sharp and purchased a harp, and played several tunes with her chin. There was an old man with a flute. A sarpent ran into his boot, but he played day and night till the sarpent took flight and avoided that man with the flute. There was a young lady of Portugal, whose ideas were excessively nautical. She climbed up a tree to examine the sea, but declared she would never leave Portugal. There was an old person of Ischia, whose conduct grew friskier and friskier. He danced hornpipes and jigs, and ate thousands of figs, that lively old person of Ischia. There was an old man of Vienna, who lived on tincture of senna. When that did not agree, he took chamomile tea, that nasty old man of Vienna. There was an old man in a boat, who said, "I'm afloat, I'm afloat." When they said, "No, you ain't," he was ready to faint, that unhappy old man in a boat. There was an old person of Buda, whose conduct grew ruder and ruder, till at last with a hammer they silenced his clamor by smashing that person of Buda. There was an old man of Moldavia, who had the most curious behavior, for while he was able he slept on a table, that funny old man of Moldavia. There was an old person of Hurst, who drank when he was not athirst. When they said, "You'll grow fatter," he answered, "What matter?" that globular person of Hurst. There was an old man of Madras, who rode on a cream-colored ass, but the length of its ears so promoted his fears that it killed that old man of Madras. There was an old person of Dover, who rushed through a field of blue clover, but some very large bees stung his nose and his knees, so he very soon went back to Dover. There was an old person of Leeds, whose head was infested with beads. He sat on a stool and ate gooseberry fool, which agreed with that person of Leeds. There was an old person of Cadiz, who was always polite to all ladies, but in handing his daughter he fell into the water, which drowned that old person of Cadiz. There was an old man of the Isles, whose face was pervaded with smiles. He sang "Hi Dum Diddle" and played on the fiddle, that amiable man of the Isles. There was an old person of Basing, whose presence of mind was amazing. He purchased a steed, which he rode at full speed, and escaped from the people of Basing. There was an old man who supposed that the street door was partially closed, but some very large rats ate his coats and his hats, while that futile old gentleman dozed. There was an old person whose habits induced him to feed upon rabbits. When he had eaten 18, he turned perfectly green, upon which he relinquished those habits. There was an old man of the West who wore a pale plum-colored vest. When they said, "Does it fit?" he replied, "Not a bit." That uneasy old man of the West.